Alright, so here for round 1 of an 8 man. On the die roll. Kinda. Yeah, kinda exhausted, so I might not be playing the best, but we'll see. So yeah, so this hand's like a pretty clear keep. It's got decent mana, it's got some early interactive spells, and it's got a threat. This is kind of what I'm talking about when I said that drawing multiple Japaxian probes was kind of awkward. Just because like even like the first one in this hand is kind of tough. Because like like when do I want to cast this? Like at what point is it like really actually going to like? At which point is like the information actually going to affect my decisions? And like theoretically, I could like cast it now and maybe draw a cantrip, but I could be playing against like a burn deck where my life total is really relevant. And unfortunately, no, okay, breeding pool. Yeah, I was gonna say, unfortunately, it appears that we're playing against a burn deck, but because that's a really terrible matchup, it's probably the worst matchup by far for this deck. But Noble Hierarch is probably okay. This is presumably infect, so the life on probe almost certainly doesn't matter. The question, but the information is extremely valuable, and this turn, it's not. There's no like. There's nothing I could draw. There's nothing I could discover that's going to change my play of just playing this Bloodstained Mire and passing. So, but it could potentially affect my decision as to whether or not I want to counter like a Blighted Agent. If he has like no pump spells in hand, then maybe I want to let it resolve so I can electrolyze. So I'm gonna probe now just to see what's up. I don't think the additional card I'll see next turn is going to be worth as much as the effect the information might have on my decisions regarding counter magic this turn. Yeah, so my opponent's not f6, which is always one of the perils of playing Magic online. Yeah, so my opponent has millions of pump spells in his hand and just one threat. So yeah, so next turn when he plays Glistener Elf, I'm certainly going to mana leak it. It looks like my life total actually might matter this game just because he has so many pump spells for his Noble Hierarch, but I guess we'll see. So yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna write down his hand in Firefox really quickly. Become Immense, Might, Growth, and Elf. Alright. Yeah, so I'm certainly countering the Glistener Elf if he plays it. The question is whether or not he will. Inkmoth Nexus is a rough draw for me. I think even given that his hand is just tons of pump spells, especially since Future the Nexus, I think I'm just going to fetch to maximize my ability to cast my spells. Yeah, so definitely mana leaking this because it puts a decent number of constraints on his mana. Next turn, it's an interesting question. It'll be interesting if he just animates Inkmoth Nexus and attacks me. So yeah, so now I have this question. So now that I drew this, there's the question of whether or not I want to play Tasigur. If he plays Inkmoth Nexus, if he animates Inkmoth Nexus and uses a Might of Old Krosa on it, that's kinda awkward for me. Well, yeah, I think I want to wait a turn on Tasigur. Just because if he animates Nexus and it... No, because then even then, Electrolyze doesn't get me that far. So I think I certainly just want to crack this and play Tasigur and just get a threat into play. Yeah, because if he uses a pump spell, then I'm likely going to just kill his... I'm likely just going to counter it with Deprive, and then kill his Noble Hierarch on my turn, which should prevent him from developing his hand in a reasonable fashion. And yeah, this is actually kind of a really awkward spot. Yeah, so now, is he, like, if he uses a pump spell here, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I think there's a decent shot he just passes, which is fine. This just happens, which is totally solid for me. The Noble Hierarch is actually kind of scary at this point, so I don't want to... I know his hands. I know his entire hand except for one card. So I don't want to go crazy with the probe here, I think. I think I'm just going to attack, and at the end of his turn, if he doesn't do anything, I'm going to try to kill the Noble Hierarch. And then otherwise I have Deprive up, which should be, like, almost certainly just prevents him from killing me next turn. Yeah, I mean, so the problem is that the mutagenic growth is always going to trade for my Electrolyze, which is kind of awkward. What's my opponent doing here? We're just animating the Nexus again. It is kind of nice that this puts him on a fairly fast clock, and the Deprive is very reasonable disruption. It is nice that he's just not going for Might of Old Cursa here, because if he did do that, I'd actually be in a fairly difficult position. So at the end of his turn, I'm definitely going to Electrolyze Noble Hierarch and him. This is almost certainly going to draw out the pump spell anyway, and I want to do a damage to him to take a turn off the clock with Tasigur. Yeah. So it looks like he's almost certainly just on the infect plan. Yeah, so this makes sense. He's doesn't want to expend the mana. So Murderous Cut is a pretty good draw. It's actually probably a great draw. So I'm going to... I definitely want to probe here. The question is whether I probe for life or not. It looks like he's pretty solidly on the infect plan. It's possible that he kills me with the Noble Hierarch, but I'm capable of blocking, and I've got multiple disruptive spells. So I think it's best to just probe here to preserve the mana. Okay, so he was thinking about playing Wild Defiance, which I suppose makes some sense. And so his hand is now Become Immense, Might, and Defiance. Yeah, so still just attacking. And so now he's doesn't really have a good way to play against Murderous Cut. And I know that. I think I just want to play Delver to potentially threaten to kill him the next turn. So I have access to Murderous Cut. I won't have access to Spell Snare or Deprive, so... But there's no one card he can draw, right? Because if he draws a card that protects him from Murderous Cut, then he's not killing me. So I'm just going to play Delver here, threaten to kill him on the next turn. It probably won't affect his decisions at all. It's probably just going to force him to try to kill me this turn, which is fine because it's not going to work. Yeah, so he probably has to go for it here, right? That's fine. So yeah, so his hand is all cards that don't do anything against my Murderous Cut. So I'm just going to cast it. And so next turn, he's going to have to kill me through a Deprive, which is going to be hard given that he's even more constrained on mana now. And will be even more constrained if I manage to flip my Delver. But in any case, it's pretty unlikely. He's in this game. So okay, so flip drawing Thoughtseize. The question is whether I even cast that. Like I don't even know if I do. Well, I suppose it can't hurt. Like he's not. His Noble Hierarch's dying this turn, so he can't kill me with the real damage. And I mean, his hand. I know his entire hand. It's all cards that don't do anything. 2 Become Immense, a Might of Old Cursa. I mean, all these cards are like the same. They're just 1 mana pump spells that kill me if they resolve and he hits me with a Nexus. So he's going to go for it, and it's not going to work. Yeah. Is he going to go for Become Immense, or is he going to go for... Okay. Going for the style points. I like it. Yeah, so the game went pretty much exactly as planned. I didn't have very much effective disruption that game, but I had just enough for the Tasigur to win me the game. Yeah, I actually would have lost that game had I not flipped my Delver there, right? Or maybe not. If I'd drawn a fetch land, I could have snapped. No, I couldn't have even Snapcaster or Murderous Cutted. So yeah, so that was probably even pretty lucky. So it was like just barely enough disruption to win the game. And Magic Online has crashed. So I'll be back. I'll be back after I've restarted it.